Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to take a few minutes and go over the very basics of transfer of training. So let me just pull up my notes here. We'll take a look at that. So basically, transfer of training, to put in my words, is organizations are going to ask you and pay for you to go to particular trainings, and the idea is, or at least the philosophy is, that you're going to take that knowledge and bring it back to the organization so that it can become more efficient and successful. And by definition, when you look at your notes here, it's really the extent to which materials, skills, or procedures learned in training are taken back to the job and used by the employee in some regular fashion. So again, from the organization's perspective, that training needs to be an integral process in order to more improve, again, the efficiency and success rate of that particular organization. Otherwise, the training simply was just, my words, just simply just a waste of time. So there is positive transfer and negative transfer. And again, positive transfer is really the organizational's goal. So there's a reason, why they sent you to that particular training, not only to benefit you as an employee, but to benefit the organizational as a whole. And your notes really identify that in terms of, hope is what is learned in the training program will improve performance back on that job. Negative transfer is when that simply just doesn't happen. So performance declines or simply remains the same as the result of that training, not only for you, but others around you. And there's some key notes to kind of keep in mind, and identical elements theory really touches on this. So some major causes in terms of negative transfer, so things that may contribute to this. And again, this is what we don't want. So your notes really point out in many training situations, there is a disparity between the training environment and in which that environment in which the skill will be utilized. So if I'm working in a mental health clinic and I go on a particular training and the skills in which I learn really wouldn't fit in terms of best practice in my current job, that could be an example of negative transfer. So, where we learn those particular skills and the environment in which we're going to bring them back to simply just don't mesh, we've got a problem. A second major cause of negative transfer is simply providing employees with an adequate amount of practice time. So, what that simply just means is having those individuals go on that particular training, and let's say it's an hour where it really should have been maybe 2 hours or 3 hours. So the organization is not only losing money, so to speak, in terms of sending you to that, but you're simply just not given an adequate amount of time to practice and understand that particular skill. On the flip side, it's the same thing. So when you bring a new skill back to the organization, you need adequate amount of time to practice, demonstrate, identify, and show your fellow employees how to utilize that particular skill. Third major cause of negative transfer is lack of multiple contexts in which to practice that particular skill. So one of the things that we want to do is understand, identify, and learn transferable skills. So something that we can learn about, and it applies to multiple environments. If we bring that back to our organization and it really only fits into one particular area, it may not be that beneficial or as beneficial as we originally thought. The fourth major cause in terms of negative transfer is something that I truly buy into a lot is the lack of follow-up and maintenance of that particular skill. So just because we have gone on and learned a new skill doesn't necessarily mean that we never need to reevaluate that. One of the things that I often compare this to is things like policy and procedure manuals. So these are living things. We need to constantly be reevaluating them. We need to constantly be looking at so that we stay on top of what is considered best practice within our organization. So, with evaluation, what are some good ways in which to go about doing that? Well, Kirkpatrick's taxonomy within your book talks about that. And again, really four criteria that we really look at to make sure that transfer of training happened in a positive way. One is simply what we would call reaction criteria. And this is simply by definition, trainees' reactions to the training, along with learning criteria. What did they get from that? Okay, what was their reaction to it? One way in which we typically measure this is through surveys, questionnaires asked to trainees, feelings about the training. Did they feel it was beneficial? Did they feel that what they learned they could bring back to their organization? Did they, again, we're evaluating that particular training, all right, and whether that person feels they can bring it back. Learning criteria is criteria that reflect how much of the material is actually learned in the training program, along with reaction criteria. So, how much did that particular person learn? So, if we do an hour-long training, we're not only going to evaluate the feelings and thought process of the employees and what they felt about the training, but how much did they learn? Did they only remember the beginning of the training? Did they only remember the end of the training? Based upon that, we can go back and evaluate how we teach it. Okay. For example, one of the things I often really stress with my students is this understanding of semantic learning. So, I'm teaching you this skill. It's important that you not just identify and know it by definition, but how is it that you can apply it to what it is that you are doing so that it is personally and individually important. So very often, I mean, I know, not everybody I'm talking to is going to be a psychologist or a therapist, but these skills can be utilized across a wide variety of different areas. So if I'm teaching you something on stress management, how can you utilize that working as a human resource officer? Or how is it that you can utilize that being a police officer? Or how is it that you can utilize that being a nurse? So, again, reaction criteria, learning criteria. Another thing we look at is what we call behavioral criteria. So, this really refers to changes that occur due to the training that take place back on the job. So this evaluation could really be looked at back at the organization. So again, a great way to gauge, did transfer training actually happen or not? Are we still doing the same things in which we were doing before? Or are we now changing our behavior and applying what has been brought back to the organization and moving forward with that? Results of the criteria, we're looking at the ultimate value of the training program. And again, that really is a culmination of reaction, learning, and behavioral. Great example I have here in the notes. If the evaluation indicates that trainees responded favorably to the training program, learned the material well, and used what they learned to improve their job performance, the training program is arguably good in terms of that. If costs incurred, developing, conducting the training far outweigh the performance improvements. Training may appear to have worked in many ways, but wasn't worth it from the organizational standpoint. So what that really is talking about is, organizations are going to, pay for training. They're going to pay for employees to go out, learn materials. We need to evaluate how good that training was, and then most importantly, how is it impacting our organization? Are we becoming more efficient? Are we becoming more successful in terms of moving forward? All right, so hopefully that kind of gives you guys a little bit better idea in terms of what transfer of training is as you move forward in this course. All right, thanks, guys.